Welcome to the Holistic Psychiatrist Podcast, a place for inspiration, insight, and information on holistic mental health. Join your host, Dr. Alice Lee, and discover critical information on safe, effective psychiatric medication withdrawal. Explore new ideas that enlighten and expand the mind with cutting-edge authors and experts, along with former patients as they share their miraculous healing journeys. It's time to build your well-being from the thought up. It's time for the Holistic Psychiatrist Podcast. Here's your host, Dr. Alice Lee.
Hello and welcome to the Holistic Psychiatrist Podcast, where building well-being from the thought up creates miraculous healing journeys. I'm your host, Dr. Alice Lee, the holistic psychiatrist practicing in Stamford, Connecticut. For more information about me and access to free articles, podcasts, and contact information, please check out my website, holisticspsychiatrist.com. Thank you so much for listening today. Today, we're going to be talking about energy medicine and the use of scalar machines with Dr. Elisa. Elisa Medhus is a physician and mother of 5 who has practiced internal medicine for more than 30 years, and she's the author of 3 award-winning parenting books. Dr. Medhus devotes herself full-time to helping people and animals heal and transform their lives through scalar energy work as the founder of Atlantis Scalar Incorporated. She offers a wide range of remote scalar services designed to support physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being for clients around the world. Through Atlantis Scalar, Dr. Medhus provides transformative energy healing that addresses everything from chronic health challenges to emotional blockages and spiritual growth. Her work represents a unique fusion of conventional medical knowledge and expanded spiritual understanding, offering hope and healing to those ready to experience profound change. For more information about Dr. Medhus, visit her website, atlantiscalar.com. And also today, I wanted to make a special welcome to my co-collaborator, Emily. She's going to be joining us in our future podcasts, and I'm really grateful for her presence as well. So today we're going to talk about energy medicine that heal challenging disorders, especially in internal medicine, an area that I'm less familiar with since my area is mental health. So why don't we start with Dr. Medhus, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, I'm a physician, internal medicine physician that is in Houston, Texas, raising 5 kids. They're all raised now, thank God. But I practiced for 35 years, almost 35 years. And once my son died, I retired from that medicine. And also, I noticed that with conventional medicine, didn't always get the problem solved. I didn't get to the root of the problem. So then I started investigating scalar energy. It was when my eldest daughter's father-in-law announced that he had 2 forms of terminal cancer. And I love this guy so much that I decided to really research what can I do, because everything else had failed and he had like 2 weeks to live. So I found out about scalar energy, and I'll explain that when it'll come up in a question, I'm sure. And I bought a Spooky 2 scalar transmitter and receiver, did the work on him, and he lived another 12 years. So then I started using it on other people all over the world, really.
Wow, that's such an incredible story how you got into it. For those that aren't real familiar, what is the Spooky 2 and what is scalar energy exactly, for those who are unfamiliar?
The Spooky 2, it derives its name. It sounds kind of corny, Spooky 2. It has a little ghost on it. But it's because Einstein said that when 2 particles interact, then they can go to the other ends of the universe. If one dances one way, the other dances the same way. So he called it spooky dance at a distance. Scalar energy is not on the electromagnetic scale at all, with cosmic rays and microwaves and radio waves. It is apart from that. Basically, it's helical energy. It's a helical form like DNA, which is also informational, and it carries information infinite distances without degradation. It never degrades. And so I can put information in that scalar wave that's transmitted by the Spooky 2 machine, and it receives the information I'm giving it from the receiver, let it travel to a specified person based on their energy signature, and those instructions are integrated into their energy. Everything's energy. We're energy. Einstein called matter frozen light. So when we know that we're energy, we can also understand that we can manipulate a person's energy, our energy, or anybody's energy by giving it certain instructions to follow. And it's pretty obedient, actually. It's amazing how obedient our energy is compared to my 5 kids.
Yeah.
Sounds really amazing. When you talk about that energy, how is it related to maybe how I do energy work in my office, where we use intention and thoughts, and we use what I consider this idea of perfect life energy to, support the healing process, and we focus on directing that energy to the person. Is there any difference between what you do and what I do with energy work?
Actually, I think it's very similar because scalar energy is also, our thoughts are scalar energy. When people send Reiki, that is scalar energy. Starlight is scalar energy. So it's very similar. And you talk about using source, using love and living light, I think you were referring it to. But I do that too. I have source energy enter my crown chakra, infuse into my body, and go into my hands where I hold dowsing rods to determine when to go to the next frequency or not as I'm uttering the instructions. So it's very similar to what you do. Thought is so powerful, and I have to concentrate. I have to have those thoughts very clear when I deliver them to the scalar waves.
Yeah, what I think is so interesting too is you have people like yourself, you have people like Dr. Lee who practice this type of energy work, either, like Dr. Lee was explaining how she does it, you use the scalar tool, and you mentioned just now, this is really something anybody is capable of, right? I know you were telling us before we were recording the story about, it was your knee, right?
Yes.
I think that's such a good story, and it really shows, if you wouldn't mind sharing it again, and it also
Sure.
really shows just if you have an open mind to this kind of healing, you can accomplish this on your own, right?
Absolutely. All right, so I'm very clumsy person. But I love to hike. So I went hiking in the Memorial Park Forest in the confines of Houston. It's an old Civil War encampment, by the way, so it's kind of interesting. So I was hiking way deep in the forest, and I fell, face planted, hurt my knee. My knee swelled up so big, like a grapefruit. And so I had heard about Reiki energy. I'd had people on one of my blogs that I have describe it and give instructions for it. So I thought, well, I don't have cell phone service, and what am I going to do? Wait for archaeologists to find my body as they're digging up Civil War weapons, etc. 1,000 years from now? No, I can't have that. So, and I just couldn't walk. I couldn't stand on it. So I did what they said, put white source energy through my crown chakra, have it go through my body, out through my fingertips, and I saw white light shooting out of my fingertips. So I said, I can use this as a squeegee to squeegee away the inflammation, not only just the whole knee itself, but deep down into the cells, intracellularly, into the tissues, the ligaments, the nerves, the muscles. And lo and behold, my knee just started shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and the pain, which was considerable, disappeared. I was able to get out of there and walk and tell that story to get as much sympathy as I could for my husband. He did everything on me hand and foot, even though it had no pain.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah.
said, you
And
said.
that's all in your mind's eye when you're talking about, you're imagining that energy coming from, source through the crown. You're imagining it in your mind's eye and then
Yeah.
directing it. Am I
Yes.
understanding
See, when I work in the scalar field, I actually see the energy. I see it between my dowsing rods, this white mist. It's really cool. And I saw white light coming out of my fingertips. Yeah, I thought that was very powerful. Yeah, you're right. You have to have an open mind. People who are like, ugh, that's too good to be true, or hey, I'm not worthy of feeling better. It's not going to be, it's going to be an uphill battle. I'm sure it can work, but it's going to be an uphill battle for the person if they have their doubts, because thought creates reality. And if you have a thought like, this is going to work and I'm going to do this versus it's not going to work, it's like playing tug of war. The thought that's the most powerful is the one that's going to win the tug of war game.
Well, there's a lot of aspects to what you just shared about your knee. So I was wondering if we can break down that experience into its various components to help us understand how you can use thoughts or energy to heal ourselves, because I saw quite a few different things that you were doing with your mind to help support the knee's healing process. So maybe we can look at, what are important things to do to help someone else who, let's say, gets stuck with a problem they want to heal. What do they need to do?
Well, besides the visualization I talked about, you also have to have the thought. You have to see your knee as completely healed. You had to feel it as healed. You had to smell, taste, everything. You have to employ all your senses and put it into that thought so that it's more powerful and it can create the reality more readily. So employ all senses. But yeah, I just saw myself walking out of there. And I think that's what did it.
That's interesting, because I always felt like when I did any kind of energy work, using both the right and left brain combined together, visualization, intention, which is what you're saying. It's like trying to use the whole brain to create reality.
Yeah, feeling the emotions of it being healed. Thank goodness I'm not going to be stuck here. I'm so grateful. Gratitude is important to put in the mix as well, I think.
Emily's nodding.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's something that we do a lot with energy work, I think, is focus on gratitude. I also found it interesting the way that you described that, because you're really visualizing and putting yourself as being the healed version of you. And oftentimes when I have done energy work, the most powerful, we often say we've shifted. And that's ultimately, I think it's very similar to what you're describing, is this idea that you're feeling, you're smelling, that kind of, you're visualizing yourself and feeling it through every sense.
Yeah, and
your 5 senses.
Yeah, and I also put love into the equation too. As corny as it sounds, okay, I know it's corny, but love is an energy too. And I was speaking with you guys earlier how Einstein, toward the end of his life, tried to define love energy in a formula, and he never did get to it, but he felt like love was an energy. And so love your knee, love your healing process, love every single cell in your body, love yourself, love you that's hurt, but love yourself more, the one that's walking out of the forest with no limp.
That's really powerful. I like that a lot. Yeah, because we do use the idea of loving energy, I think, through energy work. But yeah, it's really powerful when you put it in that perspective.
And I use it in the scalar field too. I actually feel love from whoever I'm working on. Even if I really don't know them, except for their name and address and their date of birth, I just sometimes get overcome with emotion and start crying a little bit. I know that sounds crazy, but I just feel so much love for that person because I know that love energy is going to really help them heal or help whatever we're trying to accomplish, whether it's to increase their abundance, heal them physically, mentally, or spiritually. I'm very sappy anyway, my kids. I still try to get them to sit in my lap, but they won't have none of that. But so I tend to be a very maternal person anyway, so I have a lot of maternal love that I use in my scalar healing. Everybody's my baby.
Yeah.
It reminds me that for a while I was trying to improve how we were able to help people heal with the least amount of stress, because sometimes the energy that we direct or we're connected to is so literally like healing that person so powerfully. It can be like being hit on the head with lightning or something. And sometimes they may have a healing crisis for the next 3 days afterwards. So I was trying to soften it. And that was when I had this intuitive sense of directing or connecting us to a loving source of life energy. And when we did that, people did feel like the healing process was not only more powerful, but it was also much more gentle.
That's incredible. Yeah. Powerful, yet more gentle. That's incredible.
more of an
really love that.
impact, a stronger impact, I think, right? Without the negative side. I mean, there weren't really negative side effects, but like you said, just too powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. As someone who had experienced energy work in healing, Emily, I wonder if you could share like what it felt like to kind of shift after a really powerful energy session. Because you mentioned that you would have kind of a particular response when it's a very powerful.
Yeah, well, and honestly, I feel a little bit high, euphoric, and I think I've always described it to you is initially I feel out of it. I don't know if those are the best words to use, but I don't mean that in any sort of negative way. It's like my brain is trying to catch up with whatever just happened physically, because I have found at this point over the years, as I've become more and more open and I believe so strongly in energy work now, the shifts, if you will, happen so much quicker for me than they used to. So I think that that's part of it too. There's a lot, I think, common side effects, which you've seen plenty too, Dr. Lee, the yawning, the teary eyes, stuff like that. But the real, what I've always called big shifting is it's almost like just, I feel kind of, ooh, I don't really have a whole lot of words for it. But it always wears off within 30 minutes and I'm just full of energy. So
that's so great. You're a very powerful healer.
Well, I think it always takes two, one to be receptive and to be healing at the same time. But it seems like there's a lot of similarities between what you do with scalar energy and the machine that you use, the fact that you need to use your thoughts and intentions and things to direct that energy. I wanted to kind of ask you a kind of the opposite side of the question, which is people can think themselves well. Can they think themselves sick too?
Oh, yeah. You have to be very aware of your thoughts. Beware of your thoughts, in fact, because let me give you an example. I had a nurse that worked in my clinic. Actually, she gave me my kindergarten shots. She worked for my parents. Betty Jo. I just loved that woman. But almost on a weekly basis, she would tell my mother, who was a general practitioner, I'm going to get colon cancer. Check me, Dr. Jackie. Do a SIG on me. Do a proctoscopy on me. Check me for colon cancer. Check me. And this went on for years. And when I took over their practice, same thing. She kept asking me to do a sigmoidoscopy, et cetera, et cetera. And I did. There was nothing. But anyway, then I retired. And during that lapse, she developed colon cancer. I saw her die. It was very sad. And I had a similar experience. I was watching Marcus Welby, MD. That I don't know if you remember that program. It's dating me a lot. And this little boy had a disorder of blood dysplasia called ITP, idiopathic thrombocytopenia purpura. That's where your body attacks your platelets that are responsible for help clot your blood, and the platelets hook up to an antibody, get destroyed in your spleen, and your platelet count goes way down. So my father, who was a thoracic surgeon, was in the other room, and I asked, what is ITP? I was like 18. And he told me what it was. And so 3 days later, I'm in physics class in high school, and I have this blood blister that one of my friends said, what is that? And so I don't know. So I went home, called my mom, and said, I've got these blood blisters all over me. I had ITP. I developed just by thinking about it.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? So be aware, be very aware. Think only good thoughts for yourself, people.
Mm-hmm.
And that means no self-loathing. I think self-loathing is responsible for a lot of diseases, including autoimmune diseases. That's your body attacking yourself. So
I guess a follow-up question to that is because I have been that patient in the past. I've been that patient that has gone through several medical issues, and I'm, of course, a former patient of Dr. Lee's, and I had reached back out to her, I think because what I realized was I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And we kind of had this discovery that we need to work on the psychological aspect of what's going on with me too. So what kind of advice would you give to people, I think, maybe in a similar situation to what I was in at that point in time? Because I see that a lot with people going through psychiatric medication withdrawal or different types of chronic illness is you have waves and you have windows, and you are always waiting for, even when you feel like you have fully healed and life is going great, there's still a little part of you that's always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And even for me, it's like, no, don't think about it. Don't think about it, because then you're just going to bring it about. But then I'm still thinking about it by trying not to think about it. So it's almost like this loop that's hard to get out of. So what kind of advice do you have for people like that?
Well, it isn't easy. And I'll tell you, medication withdrawal, especially from antidepressants, it's very difficult. And I applaud you for being able to help patients through that. But I think that's a component of self-loathing. If you don't love yourself enough to be well, then that could be a problem. And sometimes you just need that inner child healing, which we do with the scalar energy and the trauma release, etc. Trapped emotions can cause that sort of sensation, can create disease of physical and mental type. Mantras probably would be helpful. I am well, I am healthy. Look at yourself and as a healthy person all the time. Imagine yourself, if you're diabetic, throwing away the insulin needles and the insulin, and just imagine yourself. I did that with my high blood pressure, actually. I imagined myself throwing away my tenormin, my blood pressure medication, and having a low blood pressure. And I was on 100 of tenormin extended release, and now I'm on 12.5 milligrams, and my blood pressure is 100/62. So you can actually do powerful things with your diseases if you see yourself as not being ill.
Mm-hmm.
The victim mentality is very, very hard to get out of. I've been there many times, especially when I was much younger. 70s, forget it, I'm fine, whatever.
I think the hardest thing for me was admitting it first to myself before,
Yeah.
trying to work on it. But those are all really
took a lot of courage. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
For
I was
you.
wondering maybe if you can share some of the wonderful outcomes that you've experienced as you've used this approach, energy medicine approach, for either people or animals. Whatever
Sure, lots of
example
them.
you want to share.
Well, one of the first was this young lady who was going to be admitted involuntarily to the psych ward. She was absolutely off her rocker. I hate to use that, but she was really psychotic. And the family came to me asking for help. They found scalar energy somehow. So I did the main service on her that night. And in 3 days, she was completely normal, now going to medical school. We do it for abundance too, because your energy has tears in it, but it also has portals that are supposed to bring in abundance and other things. And those portals can be slammed shut with trauma, loss, etc. So when I open the portals, abundance can come in. So I had the same lady, actually. No, that's a different lady. One lady, she had me get rid of this. She took a photograph, a selfie, and there was this creepy looking, looked like Marilyn Manson, creepy, weird, ghostly figure between her and her friend. And she was scared to death, and it was scary looking. I have it on my phone, actually. And so I did the main service on her, and her whole life changed. The energy in her house was completely normal finally, and she also had abundance because we opened up the portals. She had a distant relative give her $100,000, a check for $100,000. Some guy came up to me and gave me his truck. So of course that's no guarantee, obviously, but abundance can come in when you open portals, and energy tears that we close can eliminate bad things from seeping through into your reality. I do the age reversal on myself. I did a lot, and on people, of course, other people. I'm 70, and I think it's really amazing how well it's worked on me. And we get down to the taking away progerin molecules out of your blood, out of your body, and beta amyloid clumping, and all that. We do so much. It's like 14 pages long. But I did it on my dog too, who's 13 years old, and within 3 days, her gray fur was black, and the little old age fatty lumps on her were gone. It works really well on animals. I love working on animals because they don't have this ego. They don't have this mentality where it's not going to work on poor little me, or, you know, which all of us have that kind of mentality to some extent, or it's too good to be true. Thoughts like that work against it. And animals don't have those thoughts. So it's super easy to work on them. I love it. I love animals anyway.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, it feels like this could be used for almost anything.
We have to work on everything. You know, so we have spiritual contracts. We have to have the human experience, okay? So some of us develop cancer, for example. Sometimes you can help with cancer, and I have cured it in some cases, but most of the time it's a spiritual contract. You're supposed to have to learn resilience, humility, or to teach others around you about loss. Um, so there are some things that are genetic disorders are really hard to treat, but I do have Archangel Michael help me block the expression of the bad genes sometimes, and sometimes it works, but often it does not, because you're supposed to experience that in life. It's supposed to be part of your human experience.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have been working on genetic issues using energy. And one of the
Good.
things that I've discovered that is helpful for shifting genetics a little bit more quickly than if you were just directing life energy at the genes is directing that energy to heal ancestral traumas.
Oh, yes.
So you're not healing yourself per se, but you're healing those who had suffered ancestrally. And the intentions also need to be pretty specific as well. Like, for example, for a long time, I was focusing on, the typical traumas like neglect, abuse, hardships and stressors like that. But now I'm moving on to war, cataclysms,
Yeah.
earthquakes. There's a lot of things that ancestors go through, and I can imagine that it has an imprint on the genes. And because
Absolutely.
the energy that I'm working with is not bound to space and time, that's why at least the energy I want to connect to can help with everything, as if past and present and future are all in the present moment. So I've been working on that, have been seeing the numbers change, but it's so new in terms of my approach that I have not been able to see biological changes as much. So I'm waiting for that result as well.
Well, it's fascinating. But yeah, when I start my scalar instructions, it also includes instructions to transcend time, space, frequencies unknown, known and unknown to humanity, locations known and unknown to humanity, past, present, future lives, etc. So I think that's really important, the way you're doing it. Very important. And we also cut ancestral DNA as part of the main service as well. Like you, I had not really been able to evaluate that clearly. It's difficult because I don't know. We do so much. You don't know, is this thing that's making this get better, or is it something else that we're doing with the instructions? So the instructions for the main service is really long. It takes 8 hours to do.
Oh, okay.
Either that or I'm a little slow.
Well, so what does that process look like? Why does it entail this so long?
Yeah, good question. Well, I have to say the instructions at different frequencies, different things at different frequencies, starting with 1 megahertz in the scalar field, and then going up to 1.05, and eventually creeping up to 8. I have a different frequency set for different things. Like if you want more abundance, I have to do this frequency set. If you want to help with an autoimmune disease, then I have to use this frequency set, etc. And I just deliver the instructions, concentrating very strongly, watching that white mist between the dowsing rods. And once the white mist is gone, then I know it's time to shift to the next frequency in the frequency set.
Wow.
Is the machine powered by you then?
I don't know. That's a really good question. The white mist is an interesting story because when I was first doing it, I had Palo Santo at my feet. So I didn't want any negative energies to interfere with it. And so, of course, there was white mist. So, I kept seeing the white mist, and then I got up and, walked to the living room, and the white mist was still there. So, oh my God, that wasn't Palo Santo the whole time. It was, I don't know what it is really. I guess it's just energy. Or I do get assistance from the divine, so it could be that too, whether that's part of it or not. I don't know.
When you said it was still there, you said you got up, walked away. You saw it.
Yeah. And sometimes when I'm just sitting watching TV, I will see a mist. And I've been to the ophthalmologist, and actually my eyesight is better, but that's fine.
Yeah.
It's not me.
Yeah. So that's a really intensive process then with the scalar work. That's fascinating.
Yeah, so it would have different outcomes depending on the clinician, wouldn't it? Because different clinicians might have different capacities for concentration, imagination, those kind of things, right?
Yeah, you're probably right. I never thought about that. I don't know anybody else who's doing this with my frequency sets that I use, but I'm sure there are. That'd be interesting to know.
This is a little bit off topic, maybe not, but when we were speaking before the recording, did you mention that they had opened energy medicine unit at one of the hospitals near you? That didn't click until a little bit later, and I thought, wow, that is progress, isn't it?
We're getting there, aren't we?
Well, yeah.
People are getting into psychedelics finally, sound medicine, color therapy, music. I mean, we're getting there. Thank God. And I was always so dissatisfied with my own practice. Although I thought I was a very good doctor, I just felt like I wasn't doing enough. Prescribing medications is not the way to go. And of course, you need pharmaceuticals, from time to time, but a lot of times you don't need them. And you can really focus on the root cause. I remember as a doctor early on, I made a decision that before I go into a hospital room or a patient's room, I will make the promise that I will not leave that room until I make that person's life at least a little bit better. And that meant I had to find out more about the patient. Did Johnny make the swim team? How's your marriage? All that kind of stuff. And I found out there was a correlation between trauma, loss, joy, etc., and the presence or absence of disease.
That goes right to our next question, which is let's talk about some root causes for physical illnesses, because a lot of times people feel like biology and psychology are separate. And you've already said that there's a lot of connection between our thoughts and the creation of physical outcomes. So, let's have your wisdom on root causes.
I don't know about wisdom, but look, you can fall back on Bruce Lipton, the biology of belief, how you can actually use your beliefs, your thoughts to change DNA. We can actually change our DNA. Isn't that amazing? But the root causes, I think one of the main root causes of most diseases, or a large number of them, mental and physical and even spiritual, is self-loathing. We come into a very difficult world. We are influenced by the media, by society, by our siblings, by our parents, etc. And we're raised to be, this is where my parenting books come in, to be externally directed. We drive our decisions based on what other people want us to do. We're pack animals, and we want to belong to the pack. So we will do whatever it takes to please them, to conform. And we're not being our authentic selves when we do that. Instead, we should belong to the pack by contributing something meaningful to the pack. And then we can use our internal compass, not the external one, to make decisions in life. And that's a great way to get to your authentic self that's not self-loathing.
Yeah, one of the things that people come in with when I do energy testing on them is that they go weak when we energy test them for I deserve to be well, but they all test very strong with I want to be well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I love that. That's fascinating.
Emily, you were about to say something.
I was, because I think that I continue to do that on myself, that I with the standing energy test, the sway test, and it took a long time for it to be a positive. And it felt so weird because in my mind, I'm like, well, of course I deserve to be well. I know I deserve to be well.
Yeah.
But the more that I really sat with it, I'm like, there's aspects of this, that, like you said, there. And I think it's just so ingrained in us, kind of what you explained, this we're brought up to conform and fit in and do what others are doing and follow certain paths and a lot of people, myself included, are very, very hard on ourselves. So it's a difficult thing, I think, to recognize sometimes.
Yeah.
To even know that that self-loathing or that idea of I deserve to be well is, it's even there for us, that it's even an issue.
It's
So
very
yeah.
difficult. But you recognize it, and most people don't get to that step. So kudos to you, Emily.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I wish it was something that was talked about more. I wish that it was easier for people to kind of be guided to that, to that
Yeah.
kind of help. Just, I think that recognition alone that I deserve to be well, that even if there is self-loathing, it's not my fault. And there were more people like the two of you that could help us recognize these things and help us through it. Yeah.
I think everything is vibration, really, and you have to make sure that your cells vibrate at the correct frequency, and usually it's aligned to the Earth's frequency that will promote healing and dissolve blockages. And you can bring that's why people with a high energy, they're always happy. They don't really get diseases as much as the people who are down and out. The vibration is down. You're lower on the electromagnetic spectrum. That's why you say, I feel depressed, I'm down. But people who feel high, they just seem to be healthier to me. Is that in your experience, Dr. Lee?
Yeah, I mean, one of the books that I love is by Anita Morjani, Dying to Be Me.
Yeah.
And she wrote about her healing from cancer, like end-stage cancer, very quickly after her near-death experience.
Yes.
And she talked about how she had to learn about the root causes of her cancer, which, if you went way deep into the root causes, it was really about the self-loathing that you talked about.
Yeah.
And also, your comment reminded me of one of the podcasts that I just recently made with, her pseudonym was Amanda. She had a very easy healing process, but she had gone through a very hard time throughout her life. Right now, she is a sponsor for 5 women in AA. So she's now very instrumental in people's lives and healing. But one of the key things that she says is important for people to heal in AA is to overcome self-loathing. In her words, self-hate. I think this message is shared everywhere. And I also think that it's interesting because even with energy healers or clinicians, it's hard for them to do energy testing on themselves, or it's sometimes hard for them to heal themselves with energy work sometimes. And I wonder if part of it is that they're not as loving towards themselves or as compassionate towards themselves as they maybe need to be in order to make it work.
Yeah. I talk to the person that I'm working on in the scalar field while I'm doing it, and I tell them that they are worthy of love. They are a whole and part of God, our creator, source. What's not to love? They are divine and vastly so. They're very powerful, and I keep telling them that and telling them that. And a lot of people have said, when you sent me the email that the results are that you were finished, it's so weird because that just moments before I just felt this gush of love for myself. So there's so much we don't know. It's amazing how much power we have that's untapped yet. I think it's very exciting what we're doing all together here.
Mm-hmm. I think that goes back to what we were talking about with gratitude as well. I think because I'm sitting here trying to think if I hadn't had the experiences I hadn't done the research reading I had and was listening to this podcast for the very first time, trying to figure out how to practice energy medicine. Would y'all agree that maybe even practicing daily gratitude and self-love, like finding small things you love about yourself and finding the small things, even in the worst times, you can be grateful for it really is a form of energy work, is
I think you're
vibration of at least a good place to start. I know that it can be difficult sometimes, but just practicing gratitude and self-love daily, like you said, affirmations and stuff like that.
Yeah, I
So,
think you're right. That's an energy. Gratitude is an energy.
mhm.
And you can also just be grateful for your imperfect self. We're never going to be perfect. None
Very
of us.
true.
So it's okay
Very,
to
very
just
true.
love your imperfections. That's fine. And
Yeah.
just know that you're a whole and part of God and just, we're just amazing.
Hmm.
We're amazing beings.
Yeah.
Feeling,
I think another
feeling,
thing that really helps is to be of service. It
oh,
really helps raise the vibration. Volunteering, like the person sponsoring the five in AA. I mean, I wonder if that has helped her heal too a little bit.
I'm
oh, I'm
sure.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think makes it very hard for people to feel good is part of what you just said about externalizing our needs, like wanting other people to affirm us or love us. And I think this back to, trying to be more loving towards ourselves. I think one of the key things for me personally is that it's difficult to do it kind of on my own, but if I can connect to this idea of perfect loving energy, as, I think of it almost like a oneness with it, like a sunbeam is one with the sun and things like that. And then set an intention that that energy can, you can think about it as flow in or be present to help me to whatever it is that your intention is. So let's say love yourself better. I think it's a little easier for me to shift because then you have this added input of kind of a divine spark that can help generate that shift.
Yes. Yes, that we all have that divine spark.
Yeah.
Although some of us try to deny it, is there.
I think the reason why a lot of people struggle so much with this idea of being lovable, being loving, that they are love, I think is because in the world, when you are raised in a world where maybe your parents aren't loving or your friends aren't loving, things external to you don't mirror that love back to you, you feel very isolated and alone in your skin
Yeah.
because we walk around in our human bodies and that accentuates our loneliness, our aloneness. We can't, communicate to each other telepathically where
Yeah.
people don't really see who you are. And so if we, in our kind of bubble, if we don't have affirmations or people who love us, it's very, very easy to then think that we are not lovable. And
Mhm.
that's where, people start to get very depressed.
Well, I went through that during my childhood and adolescence because I was raised in an extremely abusive family. I mean, we're talking breaking bones kind
Mhm.
of abuse, physical abuse and emotional abuse. And of course, I felt sorry for myself for the longest. I was such a victim. Poor me, poor little Lisa, until I was probably in my 20s. And then I realized that I should shift my perspective. I should just see this suffering as something valuable. There's value in everything, including suffering. There's a teachable moment, there's something there. And I did find it. It made me a better mother, a nurturer, more loving. And because of that wonderful gift I got from this abuse, I was able to express gratitude for it. And once I was able to express gratitude, I could let the suffering go. And I
Yeah,
think
it's
that,
so amazing because you wrote some parenting books.
oh yeah, yeah, I know. Well, I wanted people did not what my parents did, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, they were just terrible, really just, I mean, when Eric died, my son died, the first words were, well, I guess it's going to turn to dust. They're terrible. They were awful.
Oh, yeah, they said that.
But I still love them and honored them and took care of them until the day they died.
Mm,
Wow. Wow.
So yeah, that's a good way to relieve yourself of suffering and therefore self-loathing, I think. Because
mm.
suffering makes us hate ourselves. A lot
Yeah.
of times we feel like
Wow, that
we
is so
deserve it.
kind of a simple equation about suffering and hating ourselves. One thing that I discovered from my own experience is that through divine support, I'm sure it's not from my abilities, but when I came to a place of peace and compassion for my own parents, I was very surprised the next day how I felt differently because I once I made that decision and I decided to have compassion on them and understand that the abuse that I experienced growing up was really an effect from their suffering.
Yeah.
What happened was that the next day I woke up and the first thing I realized was that by letting go of my resentment and anger and holding on to that, their central place in my life as why I can't do things or they get in the way of certain things, that I ended up, feeling a lot of like I had to hold on to like my own limitations because, the limitations are linked to the suffering, to their abuse. So once I kind of let that go, the limitations were definitely gone. And
Yeah. Wow.
I no longer had to be suffering and I no longer had to be limited by the suffering that they caused.
Wow. That is very powerful.
I
To
didn't
me,
expect that.
it helped me to realize that my parents were just mentally ill. They were just,
Mhm.
their upbringing was just terrible too, but mostly they just suffered from mental illness. Folie à deux. So, but perspective is almost everything, really. Maybe it is everything. I'm not really sure, but I remember reading the story about this lady who kept looking through her window and seeing her neighbor put up her laundry, and she told her husband, "This girl does not know how to wash sheets. They're just terrible. They're dingy, they're dirty, etc." Somebody needs to tell her. And so the next day, the same thing, or next week, same thing. Dirty, dirty, dirty. Who's going to have the courage to tell our neighbor that they need to learn how to wash? And so finally, the next day or week, she looked through and said, "Oh, somebody finally taught her how to wash her sheets. They're so clean." And her husband said, "No, I just cleaned the windows."
Oh,
So that's all about perspective,
It
people.
is. Yeah.
oh, that's
Wow.
wonderful.
Well, and sometimes I think tying it back to what we were discussing earlier too, because I've experienced smaller versions of that in my life as well, but that also ties back to the generation and ancestral trauma. And I
Yeah.
think for certain things, of course, not everything might be a lot deeper work, but for some things, shifting that perspective, you can actually break those generational and ancestral cycles.
Yeah.
I think I have been able to experience that firsthand, not with anything big, but you do feel that release, that sense of that weight kind of gone just
Mm.
by, and it takes practice, I think, sometimes to practice that new perspective as well. But
That's
yeah.
true. But you're right about the weight.
Hmm.
I felt that shift also, the weight of not having to lug around my victimhood everywhere, It's
Hmm.
very difficult to be a victim. It's so much easier not even to be a survivor, but a thriver,
Hmm.
right?
Mm. I
Yeah.
think the freedom that we crave is always associated with responsibility. And that's the part that sometimes we want our cake and eat it too. We
Yeah.
want the freedom, but we don't want to take responsibility. And sometimes it's easier to blame someone else for our own, like
That's true.
limitations and stuff. It's like, oh, I can't do this because of that, right?
Yeah. Oh, because my parents treated me like this, I'm like this. Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Empowering to have the responsibility yourself, because then you can do something about it. You can't change the way people affect you. You can only change the way you react to them.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
and taking that responsibility, using our thoughts to help ourselves heal, these are all really important concepts that, as clinicians, we both share in our work using energy. We think of energy as healing medicine, and we know that thoughts can shift the body biologically. And I think this is wonderful that you and I can get together to create this podcast, along with Emily being present to share her perspective from her own healing journey. And I just wanted to kind of finish up our podcast with a question, whether there's one important concept you want to share before the end of our podcast that you think people really would benefit from knowing from just your experiences.
Well, I think one thing people must realize is that we are emotions. We are emotional beings. And a lot of times we have things in the reverse order of how they're supposed to be. We have a thought, and whether it's a thought about self-loathing, I don't know, and then that creates an emotion, and we allow that emotion to create the choice. But really, what we should do is feel first. Immerse yourself in your feelings. Don't be afraid to feel. Sometimes the feelings may be painful, but you have to lean through the pain to get to the other side. And then you allow that emotion to then create the thought. And that thought can help you create a decision or choice in what you're going to do.
And not be afraid of your feelings. A
Yeah,
lot of times,
they're not going to kill you.
yeah, a lot of times
Not
our
feeling will
feelings
kill
are,
you. Not
yeah,
feeling will kill you, people.
that's
Trapping your
true.
emotions can kill you.
Well, I think a lot of times if you get down to it, a lot of it is love because that's what we're made out of. So we're
Yes.
just going to feel love when we dig down deep.
Yeah.
Um,
Live life in love, not fear and all of this ugly facets. Always live love and live life in love. Absolutely. Very wise.
Wonderful. That's an important message. And I think it's encouraging us to kind of be more heart-centered, where a lot, our heart carries a lot more electrical current than even our brain. So,
Mm.
we can use our heart to guide us in terms of our understanding of our feelings, reflection on those feelings, and be able to then act through a heart-centered approach. I think that's a wonderful way to be aware, something
Yeah.
for us to be aware of.
Yeah.
All right, very good. So I want to thank Dr. Medhus for being on
Oh,
our
it's been an
podcast.
honor. I've learned so much from you.
And thank you, Emily, for once again collaborating and co-hosting our podcast. It's always wonderful to have your input. So for today, I just wanted to briefly summarize that we've really focused on, looking at how energy and thoughts create biology. And it's very important for us to start with the root causes of where our thoughts are in order to really support sustained healing. And so if you like what you've heard in our podcast, I hope you'll subscribe to this podcast for more helpful information and give this podcast a positive rating. And you can find Dr. Medhus at her website, atlantiscalar.com. And you can contact her through that website as well. Also, if you want to find out more about me, you can find my website, Holistic Psychiatrist.com, and you can contact me through there as well. You'll find a ton of free information there and be able to get a lot of my podcasts on that website as well. And if you wish to integrate high quality nutritional supplements, there's a place on my website under products where you can register for Full Scripts. It's a free online dispensary that has a lot of high quality supplements that you can use. So I look forward to sharing more insights with you through podcasts and articles, and I hope you'll thrive as you build your life from the thought up. Thank you for listening today. Bye-bye.